fly free, fly free. I believe, oh, I believe. Will you dream with me?
Good morning, everyone out there. Welcome to Changing Times. It is Wednesday, September the 6th. It's going to be a great day today, and we have a great show lined up. I'll tell you what, we have Larry Ballard. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning.
I tell you what, he's been on before. He is the author of Liberty Crusade. That is a tremendous book, and if I tell you what, you can buy it on Amazon and probably other places. The fight to save the free world, okay? There is so much information in this book. You need to be sure and get it. And you've got a second book that's at the publisher right now.
Correct.
Is it going to be out in about October?
Yeah, probably October.
You need to get that too, second book, because God told you to write 3 books. So
the second one is Restored Republic. This lays the foundation for how we got to where we are.
Okay.
The second one tells people how we get out of where we are.
Okay, well, very good. You know, I know we'll do it again someday. For the people who haven't seen Larry Ballard when he first came on our show, I think you've been on 3 or 4 times, maybe. Told the story about that you were basically dead, and God brought you back to life after about 8 hours, and He talked to you the entire time and telling you what you're going to be doing the rest of your life, which you're fulfilling what God told you to do. So we are live at Acts Media Group headquarters in Springfield, Missouri, and this is part 1 of 2 shows that we're going to do. Next week we'll do the second show, and so be sure and get your pencil and paper out right now. Take some notes, because we're going to go rapid. Once we start with slides, we're going to go very rapid, and you're not going to catch it all the first time. So the good news is we're going to repeat this show on show 3 and show 4 in September. So you're going to see this twice, and honestly, you probably can go back anytime you want to the Acts Media Group headquarters library and see that show again. You may want to watch it 3 or 4 times, share it with other friends, and take notes, okay? So what we're doing today is a little bit different, because at first we were going to talk about the collapse of the economic system in this country, and I think a lot of people see all the different cracks that we're having, you know, and so it's starting to crumble. But you're not going to do that today. You're going to talk about 911, right? And the other thing is that so when will you do this? The second part, is that when we're going to do next week? So next week you want to make sure that you come, because this is extremely, extremely important. Every American should be concerned about what's going to happen and what the result's going to be too. And a lot of people are going to be pretty nervous about this, but I think God has a plan, right?
He does.
And so this is all about God's plan. And so if you're faithful and you have a good relationship with the Lord, then I think you're going to be okay. All righty. And I think that's where we need to kind of start. We'll let you do the slides, and we'll kind of go on. I've got a couple more questions we'll just kind of ask as we go along. Okay.
To set the stage, basically last time I was on, we did eight major wars that we've had, and I wanted to tell the people how they were control mechanisms. And then I had said, that's scary, but next week what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we restore a republic. Well, Lynn was nice enough to give me another week, and I thought we needed to go into detail on one of the wars, specifically on what happened as a result of 9/11. So we're going to deep into 9/11 and understand that there were significant ulterior motives as to why that event happened. Next week, then, we'll talk about restoring the republic. So we got our first slide up?
Yes, the slide that you got right there on your computer. That's what we've got.
Okay, so basically, I'm a historian and I'm a Bible guru, kind of. Anyway, bottom line is I'm going to tell you the history associated with current day events so that you can see the playbook of the global elite playing out before your eyes. So in order to understand 9/11, we need to go all the way back to before World War II, to the rise of power of Hitler. And what Hitler did correlates very significantly to what happened on 9/11. He was the head of the Nazi Party. He was against the communists, and he wanted to be in complete control of the government. So he arranged to have the Reichstag, which is the German parliament, burnt down. blamed it on a communist, and that led him to the opportunity to become chancellor and gave him dictatorial powers. He became the Fuhrer. He was supposed to give those powers up after 6 months, but we all know what happened. We went into World War II. We had the concentration camps, etc. There is significant parallel between that and what happened on 9/11. We didn't take down Washington, D.C.'s White House, but we took down something as important. We took down the financial center of the United States, which is housed in the Twin Towers. So they were brought down, just like the Reichstag was brought down. And then just like the Enabling Act was passed to give dictatorial powers to Hitler, the U.S. Patriot Act was passed to give dictatorial powers to our president in the White House. And now look, if you look at that far picture, you see that we've got people in somewhat of a concentration camp setting. So basically, going to the next slide, the Enabling Act could circumvent all the legal systems. People could be arrested, they could be put incarcerated and had no legal rights whatsoever. That, folks, is exactly what we've done. Going to the next slide with the Patriot Act. And here's what happens. If it hadn't been for 9/11, the events of January 6th would have never unfolded the way they did. What happened on 9/11 was only possible because of the legislation that went into the Patriot Act. So I'm going to read you some stuff here. The U.S. can confine citizens without charges to court rules. That was all the way back in 2005. Coming out of the Patriot Act, it says, Section 802 of the Patriot Act classifies that any criminal act, even a misdemeanor, can be classified as a terrorist act. And in that event, here's how those poor people who protested peacefully at the White House got put in jail, have not had a lawyer, and have been rotting there ever since. It says U.S. citizens can be declared enemy combatants, be secretly arrested without charges or a lawyer or a trial, and be stripped of their citizenship, flown to offshore prison camps, and indefinitely detained and even tortured. Folks, if that is the definition of a dictatorship, I don't know what it is. We are following directly along the lines of what Adolf Hitler did to rise to power. If we go to the next slide, we'll see it gets even more heinous. Did you move on? Okay, this is Executive Order 51. Listen carefully, folks. Everybody's nervous about an impending financial collapse, and I can tell you it's on the way. I did a show not too long ago about the banking collapse, and now we've had BRICS that's basically going to cause the U.S. dollar to be basically turned into toilet paper. Here's what Executive Order 51 does, giving more dictatorial powers. It says the president may declare an unspecified national emergency without conferring with Congress and assume all functions necessary for continuity of government. Catch this, and including local, tribal, federal, and even just lost the word I wanted, tribal governments. But here's the bad part, folks. Under that act, under FEMA, is given these powers: authority to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production, distribution, energy, wages, salaries, credit, and the flow of money in U.S. institutions, including, listen up, the power to seize all financial instruments, including currency, gold, silver, and anything else if they deem an emergency exists. This is the playbook. Now I want to go back again. I want to go back to 1933, and I want you to see they just repeat the patterns. In 1933, in the heart of the Great Depression, we declared bankruptcy, and what did the government do? They said, folks, you will turn your gold in. If you do not, you are subject to $10,000 fine or 10 years in prison. So the people out there, I still recommend getting gold and silver. But the government understands, has the right to take it. What they did in 33, they didn't just take it and give you nothing. They took it, but then they doubled the price of it once they got their hands on it. So we're heading into a financial collapse, and we have very little that we can do except pray to God and believe that God's got our hands. So what I want you to understand is that everything that's coming down is being done by a shadow government that has the intent to destroy us, to kill us, to basically destroy 7 billion of us so they can get their new world order established. So I want to read you something that happened that enabled that Patriot Act to become the dictatorship that it is. There was a bipartisan agreement signed that was, in fact, to have been the Patriot Act. But President Bush, put in power by the global elite, pulled that document at 3:45 in the morning and placed one written by his global cronies, and it gave them dictatorial powers. I'll read you a quote here. The interests behind the Bush administration, such as the CFR and the Trilateral Commission, founded by Brzezinski for David Rockefeller and the Bilderbergers Group, have prepared for and are now moving to implement open world dictatorship. And that is by an advisor of NATO. Now, I want to go back and basically give you some feedback again. What they did is exactly what has happened in the past. The Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, who initiated this, basically in their handbook say it is our stated goal to collapse all sovereign nations and create a one world government. So clearly, we see that Bush was not working for the interest of the American people, but was working for those people who want to end our government and create a dictatorship, just like what Hitler did. Moving on. So was there an ulterior motive behind this? And if so, what it was? Here it is, clear as day. There is a chance for the President of the United States to use 9/11 disaster to carry out what? A new world order. And that was by Gary Hart. And you might remember he ran for the presidency until he got involved in a little bit of a scandal and pulled out. So we're moving on. I'm trying to lay the groundwork that this was all intentional. The end was to basically take us into a dictatorship, to utterly, completely, and absolutely control us. So if that's all planned, is it possible that it was pre-planned and they knew before exactly when it was going to happen and what it was designed to do? This next slide tells us that that's exactly the case. There was a report that came out in 2000 called Project for a New American Century, abbreviated PMAC. And what it was about, it was the full-blown military plan for the war that was about to happen. And it was outlined 1 year in advance. And what it said is, we have 4 principal objectives we want to achieve. And we can only do it if we can get into war. We want to expand military bases around the world. We want more money. We want to be able to topple governments that are not in line with what we want. All of that happened, folks, as a result of 9/11 and the ensuing war. So let's move on. Now, I really, really want to set the stage to say, you can't look at an event the day it happens. You have to look at an event years before, because they stage these things. So I want to show you that the planning for 9/11 started years before. So I want to read you a quote. And what you're looking at here is you're looking at the Oklahoma building that was blown up. Mm-hmm. And what did that do? That gave us a precursor for the Patriot Act, because it caused a terrorist bill to be passed. What the CIA has done, this is a quote from a very important person, because he is in the inside of the CIA. What the CIA has done to this country is unbelievable. The CIA is behind most, if not all, of our terrorist attacks. We had Pan Am 103, we had the USS Cole, and we had the Oklahoma bombing. 1 year later, the Oklahoma terrorist legislation is passed that takes away our rights, and that is coming from Ted Gunderson. And listen to his credentials. He's in charge of the U.S. Bureau of CIA in Los Angeles. So this is an insider telling us this was planned in order to take our civil liberties away and move us to a legal dictatorship. Moving on. Now, this is a guy who's somewhat controversial, so let me give you a little bit of an idea who he is. This is Aaron Russo. He was a film producer. At one point, he ran for political office and lost, but he had a lot of money and some connections, and he got a chance to meet the Rockefellers. And what I'm going to tell you on this slide is basically a conversation that occurred between him and David Rockefeller at one point in time. So they're having a conversation, and this quote is from that. It says, 9/11 was done by people in our own government, in our own banking system, to perpetuate the fear of the American people. The idea is to keep us constantly in fear so we can be controlled, to subordinate us into anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, to create an endless war on terror. So now let me interject something. When this war started, Bush came on and said, this is going to be a generational war lasting 30 years or more. Why? We could have ended that war anytime we want because they had a political agenda. And one of the key things was to drive us into debt. Before this was done, that war and the associated costs with it cost us $13 trillion. Think about what America would look like if we had $13 trillion to rebuild our infrastructure, to build factories, to take care of people's social needs. We would be that shining city on the hill. And instead, we're on the brink of financial collapse. It's all planned to bring us down. And what I'm trying to do is ring the alarm button here so that when we talk next week about how we have to restore this republic, and I call for you to stand up and to stand united and take this country back, you'll take this seriously, because folks, if we don't, we're not going to have a country in a short period of time. So I want to get down to the bottom. The end goal is to control the whole society, to have the banks and the elite people and some government controlling the whole world. That was what David Rockefeller said when Aaron Russo asked him, what in the world is this all about? To control us and to give control to the one world government that want to enslave us and kill most of us. So go on down to the next one, if you would. And you guys may not, if you aren't historians like me, you probably don't even know who this person is. It's Larry Silverstein. He was a politically connected real estate agent or a builder, and he happened to have bought the towers 7 weeks, I think it was 6 or 7 weeks before they came down. I want to tell you what happened. So basically what happened is in the time from he bought it until they came down, it was only 7 short weeks. The first thing he did, think if this doesn't sound like, oh, there was a plan. He renegotiated the insurance policy and got double indemnity. Listen, in the event that the towers were brought down by what? A terrorist attack. And he got permission to rebuild the towers in that event. And what people don't know is they had been trying to figure out a way to take those towers down for years. They only had about 50% occupancy, and they were virtually condemned because they had so much asbestos in them. And so they had 2 towers they didn't know what to do with. And guess what? They got demolished for free. And he got the right to rebuild them. And he only spent a little over $100 million to acquire them. And 7 weeks later, he gets an insurance policy that pays him $4.5 billion.
Wow.
Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
You got some questions?
No, I tell you what. So one of the things I'm thinking about is, as you're talking about this 911, you think it's possible that we could have another 911 event like this?
That's why I'm doing this.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what you need to tell the people. The people need to listen to this because this is fascinating. I mean, it really is, and it's kind of scary to think that we're all kind of like puppets, running around not knowing what's going on, but no, I just continue. I think this is great.
Absolutely. This is why I'm doing this. I look at the Bible and I say, there's some things coming up. We're in a Jubilee year. It ends the 15th of September. When did 9/11 happen? On September the 11th. Historically, I see patterns. And when we get to the end of a Shemitah year, which is every 7 years, or a Jubilee, which is kind of a super Shemitah, we generally have some kind of a financial collapse. So is a financial collapse looking like it's imminent? Absolutely, because BRICS has come on, and BRICS' stated objective is to take away control of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. And they just finished a meeting, and it gives them power to buy internationally traded commodities in other than the U.S. dollar. India just bought millions of barrels of oil using their currency, and now they control 1/3 of all the international trading that's done. That, folks, is going to cause a cascade that over the next few months is going to cause the U.S. dollar to go into probably hyperinflation. So I'm looking at that event and saying we could have a significant financial collapse. Then we move to the 25th of September, and that is the new year. That's Rosh Hashanah. And these global elites are enemies. They're basically demonic forces. And guess what? They love to do things around biblically important dates. So I'm thinking we might just, from a biblical viewpoint, have some kind of an event. But what more than that, what's happening is the truth is beginning to come out. For ever since COVID, little by little, the truth has been dripped out, and more people now are seeing what's going on and understanding. The global elite are beginning to lose their grip. And when that happens, it's like a lion in the jungle who's wounded. They're now in real peril of losing their control. And when that happens, there's no telling what they're liable to do. So I think we're coming into a period where we're right at a tipping point, and they're afraid of losing power, and there's no telling what they want to do. And what I want to tell people is, if we have some kind of catastrophe like 9/11, folks, don't send your sons off to war. War is a trap. War is the mechanism by which they control us. In that last presentation, we talked about the 8 wars. They drove us into debt. They forced it to take us and other nations to take on a central banking system. And we talked about establishment of a central bank was 90% of establishing communism. So with that, that's why this is so urgent. So let's move on. This next slide, we're now going to look into some photographic evidence that those towers did not come down because of those planes. And we're going to start with the most egregious one of all, Building 7, at 2 tiny little fires. There's the photograph, folks. It's standing there in the midst of all that dust. And what happened is 1 year after this, Larry Silverstein, the crook who bought the towers, he basically unwittingly confessed. He talks about how he's getting a phone call on 9/11 from the fire department, and they're saying, we're not sure we can control the fire. And he says, well, so many lives have been lost, let's just pull it. What does that mean? That means let's take this building down by controlled demolition. And within 5 minutes, the fire department is saying to the people, back up, this building's coming down. Now, I want to give a caveat here. I worked in construction going through college, building high rises, stainless steel structures just like this. If you're going to bring a building like that down, it takes weeks to wire it for controlled demolition. So they didn't just push a button and that building came down. It was planned long before. And there's a reason. That building housed almost all of the white collar crime information that we had wiped out. And it also supposedly had a huge repository of gold. There was an ulterior motive to take down that particular building. Let's move on. I want to show the conspiracy.
Larry, hey, we're going to take a break real quick.
Okay.
Just take a breath, because we're going to do our sponsors. We'll be right back. This
Okay.
is too interesting to put off very long. But we have 3 major sponsors that we are really proud of. Brad Pistow, Trinity Insurance Financial Services in Ozark, Missouri. He is a certified fiduciary financial advisor, retirement advisor. I use them. Don Blackard uses them. A lot of people around the area, around the country uses him. You can call him at 417-581-9222, 417-581-9222. Lisa, I talked to Lisa twice yesterday. Extremely friendly lady, and she has her licensing too to help you on any type of retirement plans. And they'll call, when you call, they'll send you a book called Free Safe Money Matters. Safe Money Matters is his #1 best-selling on Amazon retirement planning book. That's the first book. Now, he wrote a book last December called Bulletproof, a continuation of what he believes in, and the principle, My Money. Jan and I have done this probably since about 2018, and we've never lost $1 with the stock market going up and down. We've never lost $1, and we continue to make money in our retirement plans as we draw some of our money out. So I highly recommend Brad Pistow, certified fiduciary financial planner. The second sponsor we had sitting right where you are last week, Larry and John Whittaker, and he now is the owner and general manager for Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia, not Youngblood Motor Group anymore, but Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. And they've been in business 45 years, the longest local owner, family owned type of car business in Springfield, Missouri. Our third sponsor is Louis Michael. He usually sits right there when he's our sub co-host, and he's a realtor for the firm in Ozark, Missouri. And not only is he a realtor, he is also very involved in his own nonprofit organization, Choosing to Live. When he was growing up, when he was in high school, senior, he almost took his life. And he's told that story many times. And he now is available to help anyone that's feeling depression, anxiety, any type of mood changes, nervous system, mental health issues, to choose life over death. So Louis Michael is just a great guy. And you can reach Louis Michael on by telephone, and even though he's out there in the woods showing agricultural land or selling a house or whatever, his phone number 417-988-1086. And he's an Elvis impersonator. A lot of times he'll sing an Elvis song while he's on the air. And so we miss him. He's been out of town, and so he's not here today either. But that's our three sponsors. We really appreciate them. That's what makes our show go. So let's go again.
All right, what we've been talking about, folks, is motive. They had an agenda. But if you look at any criminal case, you need to put together something that says you have motive, means, and opportunity. So now we're going to go to the latter two, and we're going to talk about how they had the means and the opportunity. So Franklin Roosevelt said, in politics, if something happens, you can bet it was planned that way. There's no such thing as a coincidence. So I want to tell you about this slide and about one of the Bushes, Marvin Bush, youngest brother of President Bush. Now, just think about it, folks. What are the chances? He happens to be a major financial owner of Securicom Securities, and he's on their board. And it just so happens, coincidence, that firm has the security contract for not only the Twin Towers, but for Dulles Airport and for United Airlines. Could that be the inside man? Could that be how this was pulled off? Because you couldn't get into those facilities to do what needed to be done if you didn't have a way to control the security system. So now I want to take you a little deeper into that, and it goes to a time just a couple of weeks before the event happened, and back to Larry Silverstein. And Larry Silverstein was going to have the tower's fiber optic system upgraded. And so another coincidence, he sends a crew in over a weekend, and they turn off all of the cameras because they're going to do a fiber optics upgrade, right? Well, that gave them the opportunity to wire the building for the controlled demolition. Motive, means, and opportunity.
Wow.
Let's go on. And now, folks, I want you to put your thinking cap on. I want you to not let them tell you the lie. I want to go all the way back to the period around World War I or World War II and tell you about an event that happened that very few people know that has pertinence, again, to what happened in 9/11. What you're seeing is a picture of the Empire State Building on the left, and up at the top you'll see there's a fire, and down at the bottom you'll see smoke. The smoke is coming from half the fuselage that fell to the ground. So the Empire State Building was struck not by a little Piper Cub, but by a B-25 bomber, one of the biggest planes we have, a plane about the size of the ones that hit the tower. So why didn't that building come down? Until 9/11, no steel building in the world had ever come down because of the fire. Now, if you go to the far right, you'll see the gaping hole in the side of that building, but it didn't fall down. Matter of fact, go figure, it was open for business 48 hours later. How do we compare that to what they tell us happened on 9/11? Lies, lies, lies. That's all I can say. Now, we're going to go deep into 9/11 with some pictures, and I just ask you, open your eyes. So now, I worked with thermite going through college when I worked building these skyscrapers, and I happen to know what thermite does. An open flame only burns about 1,250 degrees. That's not even as hot as the flame on your stove. So basically, it could not melt metal. So here's what happened. Those planes hit, I think it was the 73rd floor. So now ask yourself a question. If those planes hit way up there, the pictures you see here are from the basement. How is it that the lobby was blown out, the staircase to the basement was demolished, and all of the beams in the basement were cut on a 45-degree angle? Even if jet fuel was hot enough to melt steel, how is it going to cut it on a 45-degree angle? That is a picture of what they do when they bring a building down by controlled demolition using something called a shape charge that uses thermite that burns at 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit and belts steel like butter. So for weeks they were bringing molten metal up out of the debris of that building. The only thing capable of doing that is thermite used in controlled demolition. So now let's move on, and I want you to see some other photographic evidence of the fact that these buildings didn't come down based on what they're telling us. My computer is acting up. All right, here we go. So there's a picture of an actual building being wired for controlled demolition. What you see in that upper picture is the shape charge being installed on a column in a building. And I'm going to read you what it says. And I have photographic evidence of this. It says to take down a building by controlled demolition, you cut the support beams in the basement at what? A 45-degree angle, what? Facing in, just like the photographs you see above. No fire from a jet fuel can do that, but a shape charge can. Also remember, the plane hit on the 73rd floor. So how do you account for the beams in the basement being cut? These buildings were brought down by controlled demolition. There's a second piece to this. In other words, motive means an opportunity again. In addition to the buildings being closed over a weekend just before this happened, Larry Silverstein took the building over 7 weeks before, and every Monday morning thereafter, when the people came in, there was concrete dust on their desk. What was happening is the second half of what you have to do to bring a building down. You go up to the top floors and you drill into all the beams on the top floor and you plant charges. And then you go pop, pop, pop. I've got photographic evidence of pop, 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 pop happening. That causes the top of the building to collapse in on itself, which kicks the beams, vertical beams, off of those 45-degree beams that have been cut in the basement, creating your typical classical V. This is how the towers were brought down. They had motive, they had means, they had opportunity. They did not come down by that plane, just like the Empire State Building stood. Now look at this. Here's Building 5. You can see it. 80% demolished, still standing. And as we talked before, poor little Building 7 over there with two little bitty fires, and they said pull it, which means they had already wired it for controlled demolition. And now use your eyes, folks. Here's the Pentagon. Look at the size of that plane and the wings, and look at the size of that hole. That's a hole that you'd expect from a missile, not from a plane. And if that plane hit there, look at the picture. The two wings would be laying on the ground, yet there was virtually no wreckage. And what did they tell us, thinking as we were so stupid and gullible? They said, well, the fire was so hot that it burnt the titanium engines up and evaporated them. Bull crap. There's the French investigator who investigated said one thing's for sure, that was not a plane. And then we go on to Skanksville, and what you see is you see a wreckage of a real plane on the right-hand side. Look at that fuselage. You see bodies. You see massive amounts of wreckage. What do you see over here? You see a hole in the ground with a few pieces of litter. And the coroner who came on board said, after 20 minutes, folks, I gave up. He said it looked like all I was looking at was a ditch in the ground that had been roughed up by a bulldozer. They dropped some debris in it and called it a wreck site. He said, I never saw a single drop of blood. This was a staged accident site. So, folks, what I want you to understand is our own government did this to us. Not our legitimate government, but the shadow government of the global elite who have an agenda to wipe out 7 billion of us so they can create their new world order. We have to pay attention. We're on the cusp. If we don't take our nation back now, most of us are going to die, and the ones that are left are going to be slaves. So I want to bring together a whole bunch of events that we just look at as a one, this happened, that happened, the next happened. No, this is all part of the grand scheme, create order out of chaos. So we've got the border incursion. And what's happening is That's an army coming in. Look at what those men are doing. They're coming in to create chaos in this nation. They're bringing along with them a drug epidemic. They're bringing crime. We're having wars. We're having homeless people living in the streets in our cities, turning them into, just horrible places to live. And now look, we look around, and these are unconventional war. We have two mechanisms. We have direct energy beams that can cause a fire in Maui, for example. We have HARP, which is a military weapon that we acknowledged that we owned as far back as 1977. And we said, yes, we own it. And we have signed a treaty with Russia not to use it across our borders because they have the same weapon. And we acknowledged in that treaty that it can cause hurricanes, droughts, tidal waves, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, all the things that we see. We just had a hurricane in California. I'm 76 years old. There's never been a hurricane in California in my lifetime. We have floods all over the world. We have droughts. These are all to create order out of chaos. And these two technologies create plausible deniability. We're being attacked from every front, folks. It's now or never. We're on the cusp of a collapse. And this is their agenda. And now I'm going to debunk what they have told us about the green movement and climate change. They tell us it's our carbon footprint. Bull crap. It's not our carbon footprint. It's HARP, and it's the manipulation of our weather. And they're hiding the real crisis. My Bible tells me that we're on the cusp of a global famine. And I want you to look at this picture in the very middle, and what you're going to see is a massive amount of red across the 40th parallel in the United States. That happens to be where all the food baskets of the world are and where our biggest aquifers are. When I was born, there were 2 billion people in this world. Now there are 8. We are now spending 6 times more. We're irrigating 6 times more land than we ever irrigated. The problem is we're drying our aquifers up. If we don't do something within the next 5 years, it's estimated that most of the world's aquifers are going to be dry or nearly dry, and that means biblical famine. We have the technology to fix this problem. Folks, if we don't get control of this, if we don't take back our government, they're going to kill us. I'm telling you, they're going to kill us. And what gives them the ability to do now what they didn't do before? Because we're about to become useless idiots, useless eaters, because they now have their AI, artificial intelligence, and their robotics that are soon going to be prolific enough that they can take over probably 75% of all the jobs, white collar, blue collar, and at that point they're not going to need us, and they'll be free to initiate their move to the global one world government where they exterminate 7 billion of us, which is exactly what my Bible says. My Bible says that in the appropriate point in time, 2/3 of the population will be taken. And what does the UN want? They want to just take us down to 1 billion. And what did the Georgia Guidestones say? They want to take us down to 500 million. And so, guess what? We had COVID. And that was another extension of this plan. And I know there's some people out there who don't believe this, but here's a quote from Elon Musk. And Elon Musk says that if we wanted to, with the ability to alter our DNA, we could turn a human being into a butterfly. And so go back to 1984, and what did they tell us in that book? They said the time will come, then they will genetically alter us and turn us into whatever kind of species they want to turn us into. So here's a quote: "A revolt of the plebes would become as unthinkable as organized insurrection of sheep against the practice of eating mutton." That's from Bertrand Russell, and he happened to have been the man who was in charge of our propaganda regime during World War II. We've been controlled, we've been manipulated, we've been brainwashed, and they're preparing to get rid of us. So again, we're almost at the end. I usher the plea: do not, if they do something catastrophic or some series of events, don't go out like in 9/11 and join the war. We need to stand up and say no. And there's something very simple that we can do. I want you to look at this and think. We've got all these FEMA camps that we think are there in case of emergencies, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, whatever. But if that's the case, folks, why, look at this aerial view to the upper left. Why do we have stockyards full of millions of coffins? if it's not to kill us. That's basically what the FEMA camps are. There are our future concentration camps. So, folks, Agenda 21 is about killing 7 billion of us so they can usher in their utopia where there's a billion or less people on this earth. Why? Because they believe we, useless eaters, are consuming too many of their natural resources, which is the basis of all wealth in the world. Wealth comes from harvesting the natural resources, turning them into manufactured products, trading them, turning that into money, and buying power. And they're saying basically, we're consuming their natural resources too quickly. That's their motive, folks. And with that, we're just about ready to wrap up. And I want to run through, this is from a multitude of other shows. I want to leave you with this composite of exactly what they've done to us. The basis of all wealth is control of natural resources, control of manufacturing, control of trade, converted into money, used to buy power. Power where? In every strata of society, in the court system, in Washington, in your local government, in your federal government, in the media, in Hollywood, everywhere. And then how did you ever ask yourself how we keep having these financial collapses? It's so simple, folks. God told me I will give you so much information, you'll be able to see things from a 60,000-foot view and see the simplicity of it. So they caused the financial collapses, and we have one happening right now because they increased the money supply. We've increased the money supply as a result of COVID more than ever in the history of the world. They lower the interest rates to get us to invest. They push us in an investment opportunity. Then all of a sudden, bam, they increase the interest rates. Everything starts to go haywire, and basically they freeze the credit. And gee whiz, the banking system collapses. That's where we're at now. That's another reason we're doing this warning, telling you this is being done on purpose. Now, what are the 7 spheres of influence that they use to buy that power? They control the family, religion, education, media, the entertainment industry, politics, and the economy. With that, they control everything. And it doesn't have to be an institution. It can be anybody, anywhere with power and influence willing to sell that power and influence for money. And so basically, it could be your next door neighbor. It could be a newscaster. It could be anybody. And finally, the last part of what they do is events that they use to enslave us. So we've been talking about war, the fiat currency. In this next segment, we're going to talk about our fiat currency is going to be replaced with God's system of economy, which is basically commodities, the basis of all wealth. And open borders, that's just a military incursion into the United States. The drug epidemic that's going on is to cause social chaos. The division, look at how they divide us economically, politically, religiously, in every way they can. And then rigged elections. Now here, I want to go back. We think that the last election was stolen. I did a whole show on this. I want to tell you that over 100 years ago, they found out that they could buy a president. McKinley was running for office, and he was for big business. His opponent, Bryan, was wanting to get rid of the monopolies. And so the 3 richest men in the nation, Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Rothschild, got together, and they said, what we're going to do is we're going to back McKinley and put him in office. When they found out that they could buy a president, virtually every president since then, except for Reagan, for Kennedy, and Trump, have been bought and paid for and put in to serve them, not us. Those 3 men got in by accident. They thought they were a laugh. They said, a B actor? No way. They said, a billionaire playboy? No way. But they got in, and they gave us a repause that gives us the opportunity to save this country. And with that, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 more slides. All right, this pauses us and gets us ready for next week. And next week, what we're going to talk about, God, this is not me making up something. This God always gives us a foreshadow of what's to come. I'm going to take you through an historical set of events that saw America over a 34-year period immediately following the Civil War rise to the wealthiest nation in the world, superseding England that had a 300-year head start. And guess how they did it? They did it by creating a system that shared wealth and resources with every nation in the world. That's what we're going to talk about next week, folks, is God's system. My Bible tells me that right now, this time, the kingdoms of man must fall. Capitalism must fall, communism must fall, and God's kingdom is going to be put into place. And it's a system that shares everything equally with all nations. And guess what that does? That ends the principal reason for war, and it ushers in the biblical scripture that says, on earth as in heaven. We are going to have the most amazing thing happen. We're going to have the harvest of souls where God is going to come in, and they're going to be the latter-day rainfall. We're going to see signs, wonders, and miracles. Billions of people are going to be brought to the Lord, and we're going to see a period of peace and prosperity. But it means God never does that until we, the people, have our eyes opened and are willing to stand up and participate in saving our own selves. So next week, I'm going to give you the power that you need to be a part of saving this nation, saving your life, and saving your family. And with that, basically, I just want to point out that it's an emergency. And if you like what you've heard, this book, Liberty Crusade, will tell you the truth that will empower you so you can stand up and help do what? Save this republic. We haven't been a republic since 1933. In 1933, when we declared a bankruptcy, we became a democracy. And a republic is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, that requires an educated, informed populace willing to pass legislation based on what's in the best interest of what? The government as a whole. A democracy, our founding fathers called mobocracy, and it was majority rule. And when those least willing or least able to work found out that they could take money from the public coffers, it invariably caused chaos and financial collapse. That's where we're at, folks. So join us next week, please.
Hey, Larry, I tell you what. So, folks out there today, I'm going to give you an assignment. Open your eyes, open your ears, open your mouth. Be sure and share this. This is tremendous wealth of knowledge and communication between you and God. I mean, God's told you all this stuff, and then He told you to be a historian, study history.
Mm-hmm.
He told you to be a scholar of the Bible. Know the Bible. He told you to live around the world where you lived and all the things you've experienced. So be sure and share this show, and we'll be back next Wednesday. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.